Everybody ready to start? All right, I'm going to call to order this workshop of the Kerrville City Council for September 10th, 2024. Do we have anybody signed up for public comments?
Yes, sir. Jeremy Walther.
Jeremy whom? Mr. Walther, thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here. Thank you to all of you for your individual efforts and energy and caring about the city and where it's going. It's appreciated. And I wrote this down to stay short and sweet. For you, Mayor.
Thank you kindly, sir.
I am Jeremy Walther, 332 Clay Street with the Kerrville Urban Trail System. Back in 2018, a group of business and property owners along Clay Street got together, probably over a beer, to create a vision for what our little district could be. That conversation quickly expanded to other businesses, individuals, and organizations beyond Clay Street, including KPUB and the city manager's office and Kerrville City Council. In 2019, the Kerrville Urban Trail System, or CUTS, created a concept plan for a roundabout that the city was considering at Clay and Schreiner Streets. The design considered not only the traffic safety issue that occurs there, but also flooding that occurs along Clay Street during normal rain events, erosion damage where subsurface drainage ways dump into the river behind the library complex, safe passage for pedestrians and cyclists, neighborhood placemaking at a gateway between the Doyle neighborhood and downtown Kerrville, and streetscaping and other beautification projects that slow stormwater, improve soil retention capacity, enhance biodiversity, as well as increase public safety. This concept design reimagined a traffic calming device as something that could also help implement goals stated in the city's 2050 comprehensive plan. The design is publicly available through the CUTS website. As a business and building owner on Clay Street, I've seen my property tax bill payments more than double and contribute to the TERS fund, which was intended to enhance the immediate area to the benefit of many stakeholders. A roundabout at Clay and Schreiner seems like a pretty good project for TERS funds. It is my hope that the city will pick up where it left off in 2019 and will use TERS funds to continue engineering design for this roundabout, while also using the opportunity to address major ongoing issues along Clay Street and impacts to the river. If we're going to build new infrastructure, let's use an elevated standard of design. Let's make that roundabout earn the right to be part of Kerrville, baby. Let's design it to calm traffic, but to also mitigate for flooding, to protect our river, to stimulate business, and to add to the inventory of assets that make Kerrville an extraordinary place to live, work, play, and visit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Walther as he exits? All right, no. Any other speakers?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hornis.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for taking the time this afternoon. So we discussed this at the last meeting. There were questions from the dais about the number of traffic collisions, safety issues at that intersection. Chief McCall put a few of those together, and so I'm just going to do a quick recap, and then we'll go into what he found out and turn it over for any questions. So I wanted to start with that photo right there. So the TERS boundary is big. It is a large area, right? So it's 500 and something parcels of land in total. And there's a lot of projects, right? And so how is it that we're going to come to figure out how to spend the TERS dollars and where that money's going to go in such a large area? Creating the TERS district itself was a challenge. There were supporters, there were detractors, you know, and but it's one of those 2050 items. It's in there. That base year of 2018, you know, it started to slowly put some dollars together. As we said last time, it is starting to add to it a little bit more steadily, at about $350,000 a year. So far to date, there have been two projects that have spent dollars there. First was a $52,500 match to a CDBG grant through the Texas Department of Agriculture, and that was for intersection improvements at Earl Garrett and Water Street, and then Clay and Water. And the Clay and Water intersection also has some art improvements that Cuts helped to create down there, as you all have seen. And then recently, as of April, TERS participated with $50,000 to contribute towards the downtown plan as part of the update to the comprehensive plan. And so I want to talk about that one a little bit further as we continue to discuss this. That will finalize at the end of next summer, July-ish. I think we should be finished and we should get our final document from them at that time. So, in the absence of a full downtown plan, sometimes from a staff standpoint, you know, we don't want to just throw things at you all, right? Because again, that's a big swath of town. And so there are some defined projects that already existed within that area, right? So there was the CDBG grant that Main Street applied for to help with those intersection improvements. And this idea, which was discussed in 2018 and included into the 2050 plan. So one of the reasons that the discussion came up of why this, and so as Mr. Stone and I have talked, and Jeremy and I have talked, this goes back to 2018, 2019. Easements are required in the surrounding area. I think probably the minimum amount of easements that we need if we talk to Stewart about it, because it's pretty tight. And that project was initiated with the idea that we didn't have a budget for it. We didn't know what it was going to cost. So preliminary guesses when we did these concept plans with Success Engineering was the cost would be in $1 million. You know, and once everybody heard that number, TERS had maybe $30,000 in it. There's no point in doing it, right? But as I said last time, we have more dollars coming into the fund, so asks are going to start coming down a little bit more. And we have our first. This is the first request that's going to come to TERS. Mr. Stone has been there at a few meetings. And since it's a defined project within the 2050 plan, that started the discussion here to see if the board wants to spend the engineering dollars on that. And those engineering dollars, it turns out it's just about $50,700 is the cost. But we don't know what that construction cost is. We do not know, right? And that's kind of our first step in all of projects that we look at to initiate is how much is it going to cost? And we need those engineers to give us those cost estimates. And again, there it is listed out in Kerrville 2050, so it's in there for community and placemaking and downtown revitalization for that intersection at Clay and Shriner. Again, I did want to mention like the grant, like kind of the scope of TERS. It's such a big area, right? A lot of intersections. A lot of times when people talk to me about downtown, they talk about this T intersection at Earl Garrett and Water. Well, that's not downtown. Downtown is a much larger area, almost as large as the TERS district itself, right? And so there's probably 50 intersections to look at, right? And a lot of projects to consider. And currently, at the end of this fiscal year, there will be about $636,000, $637,000 in that budget. So there was a couple of things that we as staff want to flesh out. What is the appetite of the board on keeping a fund balance within the TERS district, right? How spread out do those projects, does everybody want those projects to be? Lots of questions and not a whole lot of answers. But we have spent the dollars to have Freese and Nichols come in and help us determine kind of where a lot of that goes, right? And so we will have a more fleshed out document at the middle of next year to help kind of guide this. You know, we sometimes we feel like we're on unsteady ground because, well, what's the best project? I don't know, right? This is a good project. It's a worthy project, and there's probably 10 other worthy projects. None of them have enough dollars to actually complete the construction for them at this point anyway. But I say all that to say that we don't have a good barometer for here's a ranking of these things, right? And we like to do that. We rank our utility projects, we rank our drainage projects, we rank our park projects, we do that. So this is one of those areas where now this balance is growing. I think we're going to get some good direction as we have the meetings to create kind of a document that will help guide us. But in the interim, there is a document in place that does talk about some of the TERS projects. It does mention this roundabout as a part of it. And so, I think I wanted to make sure we kind of talk through the history of all that a little bit for those that don't know, and then get into, no. Oh, there it is. Crashes. Sorry. I thought I had it on my other slide. I wasn't looking. So, talking to Chief McCall, we don't have kind of perfect GIS, RMS data on all the intersections. It takes them a long time to kind of coalesce all that stuff. In discussions with him, 2022, we had quite a few, I guess 5, but and the dangers that PD sees in kind of the configuration of that, right? So it's not a straight T intersection where you see perfectly this way and that way. You do have some buildings that are a little bit closer. There are traffic calming measures that we can put in place. Some of this would help with that. I don't know that I can say that this is more accident prone than other areas in town and other areas within the TERS at this point. So we still, if we want to look at that holistically, but from the chief's standpoint, when he looked at it, he was like, here is the crash data. So we do have accidents here. There are line of sight issues that you get coming from several different directions on here where you have visual loss when you're coming around because a building is close to the intersection. And I think from Stewart's standpoint, from a public works standpoint, this is a pretty good drain section where, like when it floods, we have a good flood. It does come down here, comes over from Hayes, and then it comes over McFarland, and then it comes down Clay Street here, and then it funnels into that that hole that I talked about that's on the sort of northeast section here. So this would also improve some of the drainage in that area. But just to be clear, this is not an ask for any kind of construction dollars. This is a design engineering cost. That's it. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back over for any questions.
For Mr. Hornis.
Yes, when I've been looking at the rendering, because I've used that, gosh, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day, that area of town to drive. So I would say when you're headed north on Clay to cross Shriner, the visibility might be improved because you would be taking those corners that aren't right now part of a roundabout, but would be. So you'd have better visibility, it appears, to go ahead and proceed across Shriner going north. So that's an improvement in my opinion. However, I wonder about spending the money on engineering if we're not together on what could be the cost. And I'm in favor of the roundabout. I just want to make sure that we do a lot of engineering costs for everything that seems like that we have. And so I'm trying to just make sure this is something we really kind of all feel good about before we spend even $50,000 or $94,000 on engineering.
And as I said, I mean, we're in the process of starting that downtown plan, right? And I'm sure that this project would rise to a level that was, high on that list. But again, having the community kind of speak to that downtown plan is I think a big part of what we want to see from a staff standpoint. I know it helps inform the decisions for the council as well.
And if it did get to $1 million, you were going to wipe out the TERS fund?
Well, that's, again, when you have the unknown cost, you don't know,
Right.
right? And so that becomes kind of a discussion with what do we do at that point, right? So you can't bond funds from TERS. So when dollars are spent, it has to wait to be replenished. So if there's $635,000 in there and one project costs that much, then that fund will be depleted until the following year at about $350,000, and then $700,000, and then $1 million. So it's going to be kind of an interesting process, how it is that those dollars are spent over the next 4 years of, will it be $1 million at a peg, one every 5 years or so, 4 years or so, or, kind of using this as a piece of a pie to kind of help, like EIC does sometimes when it's the last mile. If it's $1 million project, there's an ask to EIC for $100,000. Maybe TERS is looked at as another piece of that. Again, it's kind of, we will make it all work from a staff standpoint, but there are limitations here with the way it builds
Well,
funds.
those are my questions. I have others, but it'd take forever, so.
Mr. Harris? You're fine. Mr. Harris, anything?
Yeah, but it's just a very weird intersection. That whole thing is odd. I said it last time, and I've heard it repeated after I said it, and I thought at first it was being said in jest, but it's actually, people are saying, and if you learn how to drive in a traffic circle, it actually helps.
Mhm.
I said it last time and people were laughing at me, and, but it's true. I mean, if you know how to do it, but looking at the layout, and I know this would probably not even be considered, but where that traffic circle's at, then you got that, I guess it's gonna be a little median, that little triangle looking piece, I'm gonna say to the southwest of the circle. Is that correct?
Again, concept drawings, right? These are what they are, right? So when the engineers look at this, they will look at safety, they will look at, constructability, pedestrian mobility, all those things would play in factor, and they will give us, here's the safest version of this, and that will have an X dollar attached to it, right? Here is the alternate that you can add that will add like a feature that is distinguishable from other areas, so we'll get those as add alternates, but safety is paramount from the engineer standpoint.
I think it would definitely enhance the drive. I think it would make it look a lot prettier. One thing I also don't see, and I know we discussed it last time when it was brought up to us the first time, but there's not another pedestrian crosswalk on the west side of Shriner.
So again, with the concept, we will include those things, should we, move forward with the discussions about it, is we'll get inclusions of all these things in there.
And my very last thing, and then I'll hush, Mr. Mayor, because I want to keep
Please.
your meeting short,
Please.
but I kind of agree with Councilmember Seigerman too about just spending money. It's, money's money,
Yes, sir.
and we're tasked with not just going out and spending hand over fist, and the citizens don't trust us, or they trust us that we're not going to do that. That's why we're sitting up here. I would like to know a little bit more about what and I know we can't do it yet without the engineering report, and it all fits together like a puzzle, but at least a ballpark. Something, okay, long run, after the engineering report, we spend $51,000 for, long run to get this done is going to be X. And
Ballpark back then was $1 million, and so that's been nothing but 3 years, 4 years, 5 years really, so.
So $1.5 million
5 years.
now with inflation.
Well, it's not that bad, but it's more than $1 million, yes, sir.
Right.
That's 1, 2, something like that. Stuart can allude to this a little more than I
Part of the
can.
reason we couldn't narrow it down anymore is there is the drainage concern and how all the drainage flows through this area. Those cul-de-sac, or the little medians that you're talking about, we're really trying to use those to push the traffic out to the roundabout. The way it is right now, it doesn't function very well, and there is no pedestrian crossings there. And so that was, when we originally started this, that's what council asked us for then, is go out, give us an idea of what this could look like, and then what the cost would be to the next phase. So this is a preliminary, hey, what is the very minimum amount of surface acres that we need to make that function? So we did this report, we took that, and we went out and acquired all the easements that we talked about. But knowing that we still have some drainage hurdles that we have to overcome, that intersection's pretty low compared to a lot of the surrounding areas, and how do we get that water out of there? And then also tackle the pedestrian problem. So that's what we did. We think we have enough land. We really feel like we're just the bare minimum. But to get us a tighter number than that $1 million that Mr. Hornis is telling you about, that it's gonna take engineering to get any better than that. And the drainage has a big part in that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hornis.
So I checked with Chief McCall about how do this intersection accident pattern compare with others. He said it's pretty similar. So I think that maybe not so, if there is some few construction that you have to slow down to go through that intersection anyway, so it's not, so I don't think it's a safety thing. I'm not really against it for, you know, aesthetic reasons, if we want to dress up the downtown. But I'm really kind of with Delane, I think, and would follow what Michael suggested, is that we have some sort of a idea where our priorities are. And we don't have enough money yet, and they're beginning to put together some sort of priorities that, you know, and I think whatever the people downtown would like to do is, I think we need to take into account, really get some feedback from, you know, the taxpayers downtown and build on that. And if this is what they want to do, I think, well, that's fine.
Ms. Hughes?
Yeah, I travel this road daily about 50 times a day. I see the children walking to school at that intersection. I'm not saying that it would be a bad thing to have one there for safety issues, as Jeremy suggested. However, people need to know how to use them. And I know in the Netherlands, they have them all over the place. And truly, as somebody who is in this area every day, all day long, to me, it's more of a safety hazard trying to go north on Clay Street towards Pint and Plow from the intersection of Jefferson. Because now with all that HEB angled parking, you cannot see until you get past all those cars that are parked there. And I've seen numerous near misses at that intersection. And I mean, it would be nice if on Jefferson Street, maybe we had roundabouts all the way down Jefferson Street, because so much of that street is taken up by angled parking at HEB. And I see that as more of a safety issue than the children walking down Schreiner Street towards what used to be a school. I don't know where they're going now, but they're not going to school. So that's just my 2 cents. I mean, I like roundabouts. I don't see a problem with it. I'm just not sure that Schreiner and Clay is the best area for that roundabout. And then also, of course, the expense. We need to justify the expense and make sure that it's something that the entire downtown district wants to see.
Anything else? Anything else?
No?
Thank you. Mr. Behrens, I want to ask about drainage at that intersection. Help me remember, if drainage coming downhill on Clay Street, doesn't it go into some type of culvert that pushes it down Schreiner Street toward North Street?
So it spreads out quite a bit there. It does come down, I don't know if I
I
have.
mean, I vaguely remember a huge culvert there when I was a child that was eventually covered up. And I still see the big,
Yes.
what looks like a cut on lower Main Street slash, you know, the new cut through. But those drainage, they exist still underground, don't they?
Yes, there's still drainage underground there if you can get it to the inlets. So a lot of this is still some surface drainage that comes out of the Croc Center, or behind the Croc Center, comes all the
Gotcha.
way down and then turns.
It goes at a 90-degree angle at Clay Street toward Schreiner, some of it, doesn't it? I mean, toward Schreiner, toward North Street, correct?
So some of it, it comes down the Schreiner Street and then it goes straight over into Mr. Stone's property through that little, I wish I had a picture where y'all could see it over there, but my pointer doesn't work. It comes straight across that, going down Schreiner into Mr. Stone's driveway. Yeah, there's a drainage channel there right now. We've actually put some tire stops in there to slow it down a little bit, so when it does go across Clay Street, it doesn't blow all the way across. Our intention was to slow it down just enough, and when it got out on Clay Street, that it would make it turn and go down Clay Street and not cross the median and go all the way into the driveway. On the north side of Schreiner Street, there's a drainage swell there that's about 18 inches to 2 feet deep, and it runs right between that building and the edge of the street. Everything is really shallow there, and so that's part of the problem that we're trying to figure out, is how do we get with maybe a foot to 18 inches of fall, how do we kind of get water out of that intersection and get it where it needs to go before it gets to the intersection?
There's still not a drainage system that pushes the water from Clay Street towards Shriner Street, towards North Street. In other words, it goes from this intersection towards Sidney Baker, toward Washington.
Yes, yes, sir, it does, and it goes underground there.
Correct.
When it gets out to 16.
So that's part of the drainage solution, is getting water into that system,
Yes,
isn't
sir.
it? I'm gonna go ahead and say for the record that I support this project. I think it would enhance the downtown area. And we on Water Street salute you on Clay Street. However, I think it's a worthwhile thing. We need a majority of this council is saying, we want a back of the envelope estimate of how much the whole thing's gonna cost. Is that something within, I know you said $1 million 5 years ago. Is that something that we can do before we commit to asking the TERS for the engineering money or not?
We can.
I'm not trying to make your life difficult, but a majority of this council is saying we kind of need to know what the price tag is before we spend $50,000 on an engineering study.
Yes, sir, we could take that back to 6S and we can ask them about
Well,
that.
here's the thing. I think if I understand this process, you are asking, not today, but on a regular council agenda, that this group agreed to ask TERS for that money.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And then TERS is asked and they decide what they're gonna do.
Yep.
And then they proceed or don't proceed with funding the engineering study.
Yeah, if it's, I know we had to come back and talk through the crash information, and that was one of the questions.
And the crash information, part of the crash information isn't what we requested, isn't on this slide. We said, how many crashes are we having at Ty-V and Golf? And it was significantly less than this. It was in the
Oh.
email that came from Chief.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, that wasn't, yeah.
It's cool. I'm just saying, we originally thought that a roundabout would be increasing accidents, when in fact, the major roundabout we have in our community, it's decreasing accidents.
Yes, and yes, sir. Also,
Okay. Can I suggest a way forward for us? Why don't you, I would propose that staff put this on a future council agenda, not workshop, but council agenda,
Okay.
with an estimate of how much the total project will be. And if this body says, okay, we are willing to commit for the engineering money, we're gonna ask TERS for it. TERS is responsible for that money. They're made up of downtown business owners. If they come back and say, yes, we think that's a good idea, I think that solves several council members' concerns, and it also would allow it to progress. So in simplification, I would ask that we can put it on a future agenda, that we have on that agenda not only what you've just presented, but also a rough estimate of what the total project cost will be, if it's possible. I know a 5-year-ago project cost is no longer valid. Everything we've done has changed since COVID. But I want to, before I direct that, is that something that would be acceptable to everybody?
That sounds
Is that okay?
exactly like what we were.
I'm still interested in having, the
grand
downtown
list.
people rank some priorities, and we don't even have the $1 million yet, and we're already jumping in front of.
Well, I
everything
think those
else.
priorities would be made by the TERS board, wouldn't they? Or would that TERS board be
They're the-
part of the 2050 update?
they're the main board. They were selected to be that for the downtown update. So it's the TERS board, a member from HDBA, and a member from EIC or Main Street, if
We're
I'm not
making
mistaken.
appointments tonight.
And it's an open meeting, so we've talked to folks from Cuts, be there, anybody who wants to. We hope everybody shows up, but
Well,
the body is,
would a consensus be then to go with that plan, that we proceed placing on a future council agenda with a rough estimate of the cost? Is that?
I would like to add one more thing to it.
Yes, please do.
Because right here, we're looking at Shriner Clay, 9 total crashes. We requested and we got a report back from the police department, but it only had 2023 with one
Oh.
crash. I'd like to see 19, 20, 21, 22 for the same area. So
That'd be
we can
good.
compare apples to apples,
That'd be good.
not just 1 year. So there's just a lot of variables.
I was amazed how quickly McCall had that information.
Well, I think it's easy enough to get. You could get the intersections all down, Shriner and say, you know, what are the rest of them?
So part of the River Hill conversation is, and I think I haven't gotten it to everybody yet, is the 15 different solutions to River Hill Boulevard that have been completed and removed and put in, and staff has worked with the folks at the River Hill HOA on that. We used to have raised roundabouts, and then crashes happened, so we had lowered ones, and then we had new stop signs, and we had rumble strips, and they were taken and removed. So I say all that to say that, you know, the solutions are available, and we can get additional information on that area.
For a council agenda item,
Okay.
correct? Is that, everybody feel safe, comfortable with that? Just-
Golf and
It
Tybee.
moves it to the next step, and if that next step we say, we can still pull the plug on it, but at least it doesn't come back to workshop yet again, okay?
The other thing is, we're not even starting our update on our plan until the end of October.
Yes, ma'am.
So, you know, we're getting there, but unfortunately, if we had that already, it would be helpful because we would know what the other priorities are.
It certainly would.
You know, we're getting there.
I think all the priorities should be on Water Street, don't it? All right,
One quick question for you.
please,
'cause
go ahead.
It'll help us really nail down the price of the project if we can possibly spend a little bit of money on survey work and try to figure out the drainage solution. Because our engineer is gonna look at it and say, yeah, the asphalt's gonna be this and that, but we're still not gonna have the number for what do we do with this water and can we make it across the intersection? So there may be some small expenditure, just getting the engineer to give us a better number, because that's where we landed last time.
So does the downtown bunch want to pay for drainage water problems, or they want that money to go for things that are more for downtown? That's really a city problem as much as it is downtown problem.
We can bring back something for the agenda next time and get you a rough estimate.
And what you're asking.
We can't go ask TERS for
All right,
$4,500.
I mean, there are gonna be people in town that hate roundabouts. You know, we could just fund half of it, and it could be a traffic semicircle. Just kidding.
Well, you know, in Shriner, if, you know, it's a main thoroughfare to get from
It
Loop
is.
534 all the way to Walmart. And if you take that street, you only hit 2 lights. And so a lot of people use it. And I don't know whether that roundabout is going to make people have to sit through 3 light changes there at the intersection of Shriner and Sidney Baker, or, you know, whether it's gonna start backing traffic up. I just don't know. It's hard to tell, you know?
Have to have a traffic study. Let me ask
Yeah.
Mr. Walter one last question. Jeremy, your own cuts, is this the main thing that y'all are looking at? Is this your main project, so to say? Or do y'all have other ideas too?
This is
mean-
definitely not our main project. This is originally Cuts was involved because the city had proposed this roundabout in 2018. And it's part of the area that we were looking at. So we thought, well, how can we take what the city is proposing and enhance it to have these other benefits? If there were other ideas beyond the roundabout to use that TERS fund, my opinion is that they would be out there already, and we would already have heard about them and have been discussing them. I have not personally heard anyone talk about a better project than this one for TERS. I haven't heard anyone talk about any project for TERS. So I understand the challenge of saying, well, what's the priority of people downtown? What do they want to see? If you ask 100 people what they want to see, you're going to get maybe 100 different answers and probably not a consensus. And so I think there is part of being, you know, a leader is saying, here is what we're proposing, here is why we're proposing it. We think it's going to have the greatest impact. You know, this is what we're proposing to move forward, and then use the process to move forward. But waiting for a year, and just my opinion, expecting a list of even better ideas, I feel like if that was going to bear fruit, we would already see some of those ideas.
But has anybody ever sat down as a group and had discussions with anybody? I mean,
That's why that's why the TERS board exists, to have those discussions.
okay, have they had them?
Not really, they haven't had any funding.
All right.
All right, so I think we have consensus. Staff understand consensus? Okay, good. You may have to repeat it back to me later. The next item on the agenda is to go into executive session. I'll need a motion to do so under the appropriate statute.
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session under number 551.071.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, so vote. And it is unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Stone, we didn't ask if you wanted to say anything. I'm sorry. We didn't ask you if you wanted to say anything. I'm sorry. You didn't want to comment today? You commented last time.
Yeah, I mean, I can. I think they'll cover it.
I'm sorry to get us out of order. Please go ahead.
Mark Stone, this is informal anyway, correct? 615 Shriner Street. So one thing, when Stuart brought this to us in March of 2019, TERS money was almost non-existent at that time. And it was sold to us as a safety issue mostly. And so we were on board with that. I do have several studies. I know it doesn't sound like from what the chief is coming up with that it's like the most horrible intersection in town, but there's still other safety data to look at. One of them comes out of College Station. I have those with me. I can actually email those to you. It's a 300-page report, but there's 2 pages that brings it to a head. And there's a lot of good data there, a lot of money spent on that. And a traffic circle 50% more efficiently moves traffic through an intersection. I've heard up to 70 depending on what study. And some of the federal studies are saying safety in regards to deaths. This is out of, and they range from 70 to 80% reduction in fatal and injury crashes. This comes out of the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration. So, I mean, there are studies that are, very pro roundabouts.
Agreed.
And of course, I haven't made any qualms about I'm for this, obviously. We donated land to it and 2 other property owners did as well. So it will enhance that. Selfishly, I feel like it will enhance our property there. It'll make it easier to move around. Nothing to do with safety. I see a huge opportunity for art installation, public art installation. Another subject at another time, and different funding. But anyway,
Thank you.
that's what I have to say.
I'm sorry I forgot to call it.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Mr.
we
Stone.
are adjourned to executive session, or we are now going into executive upstairs.